Hey guys, it is Jay Campbell from the Definitive Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual and FabFitOver40.com, along with my good buddy Alexander Cortes of so many different places, Elite, Mountain Dog, Performance. It's Elite Performance. What is the name of your gym?
Relentless Performance.
Yeah, Relentless Performance on
Relentless.
What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
Relentless.
Yeah, Relentless. Sorry. Yeah. And we're really, really excited today on this podcast to be joined by Roy Barzilai. Is that how I pronounce your name, Roy? Barzilai?
Barzilai, yeah.
Barzilai. Sorry, Roy Barzilai, who has written an amazing book that I actually read about 9 months ago. And we want him to discuss it. It's essentially his book. The premise of his book is how hormones literally control and optimize the cycles of life. And it's just an amazing book. And we're going to get into depth and discuss his book about it today. So Roy, thank you for coming onto our show, man. How are you doing today?
Oh, great. It's very nice to be here. I appreciate your interest in the book. It's a revolutionary thesis, so not many people understand. But you have the understanding of hormones and testosterone, so you can relate to these issues, and it's great to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Alex, how are you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm good. I'm very good.
Awesome. Okay, so guys, we're going to just jump in real quick here. So Roy's book is, again, the testosterone hypothesis, and it's how hormones regulate like the life cycles literally of civilization. And I think kind of today, obviously, with my book, recommending that people optimize their hormones and just how key realistically as we age, hormonal optimization is to maintaining a really good life standard. I want to just get into, Roy's thesis, as he calls it, discussing, how important testosterone and all, the internal biochemistry and life hormones are as we age, and also how important they are to literally civilization. So with that said, Roy, start us off a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in writing your book, and what led you to write the book itself.
Well, good question. It has been a really long journey of discovery. I started working in financial markets. I'm a financial analyst and also a trader. And I started to see these cycles of up and down. Everybody knows the euphoria. Market go up and then down, and then everybody is depressed, and they hate the arts class up before. So, and then I found out some theories that explained it. It's called one of them is the Elliott wave theory of social mood. Social mood governs the markets, like stages of euphoria and then depression, and this goes again and again. These cycles. So I went on further, studying more into economics, seeing what's going on with the monetary system, the financial, how it integrating. But then I saw that I have to even look further, and I started studying philosophy, how the social mood influences philosophy, because you have like philosophies that are more optimistic and pessimistic and changes through history. Like you have the Dark Ages, when civilization collapsed and died actually, and barbarians took over, and you have Enlightenment where everything is thriving, the Age of Reason, the scientific revolution. So history is very cyclical, and you see that across history, cultures go up and down, like rise and collapse over and over again. And this is what's going on right now as we're talking. We see our civilization is in great turmoil right now, and lots of problems. So the cycles are very interesting, and what I found out that we have actually about 4,000 years of documented history that we can learn. That's the Judeo-Christian civilization, Western civilization, and that's what I did. I started to learn the philosophy and religions, economic systems, and I see how this system develops and shrinks and thrives again, and the cycles going on in history. And what's interesting for our discussion is that I found out eventually that hormones have a primary role in regulating and controlling these cycles. That's amazing. Nobody knows that.
Well, so go into that a little bit more in depth. When you say that they have, a mechanism that they're, primarily responsible for the cycles of civilization, can you explain that like a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, that's a new thesis. We have the new science already developed only in the last 30 years. It's called complex systems,
Okay.
and this is a different way of viewing or looking at the systems, like our body. Our body is a complex system made of trillions of cells, starting with one cell.
Mm-hmm.
Germination of one cell, and from this it grows into trillions of cells as we grow. And this growth is regulated actually by growth hormones, primarily like GH and testosterone. We peak at age 27. We have the highest fertility rate at 27. Our intelligence is higher. Our lean body mass, our muscles we are fit. And then we have the fertility. We marry. We have children, and then we start declining, eventually dying, and then we have the next generation of the children. This is the life cycle of the individual being. But as individuals, we are also a complex systems of many cells. So if we look at the same similar way at our civilization, we are also a complex systems made of many individuals, like you and I and all of the people surround you in LA and in the US and in the entire world.
Right.
We follow social networks and Facebook and Twitter and stuff. It's the same way that our cells have social networks. They communicate through hormones. That's the communication mechanism in our body, is hormones. So we have growth hormone and stress hormones like cortisol, and like is a polar system of growth and decay. So we have the growth hormone like testosterone and GH, and then the stress hormones that make our body decay, like primarily is cortisol and the stress hormone.
Yeah.
And what I found out is that civilization goes through these cycles of growth and decay, and the same way as our body does through these patterns, and they are regulated by hormones. And I can talk about lots of examples another interesting thing that I'm going to talk about is about philosophy and how it relates to hormones. Now, hormones are essentially an integral part of neuroscience that studies how our neurotransmitter hormones build and affect our brain.
Right.
Like testosterone, dopamine, and we can talk about that, how they regulate social mood and our philosophy, our social systems, and so on.
Go ahead, Alex. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Roy. I had sort of a question clarification for you, since I know, when I've brought this up with people before, having looked into, with your book, and then, the concept that hormones in society, and it's one of those concepts that I find people are very sort of dismissive of, where they hear it's like, society at large, societal trends and norms and behaviors influenced largely by hormones. The answer is, okay, whatever. It sounds like almost like science paranoia. But it's a strange irony that society at the same time. If I was to tell people, would you believe that if you starve a society of food, that would influence its development physically? And yeah, absolutely. Obviously, if a population is starving, that's going to influence the society. If I told them, would you believe that if I create an abundant, physical environment for society, that it would thrive? And yeah, absolutely. That's basic civilization. But then you get to the subject of hormones, where if I was to say, would you believe that someone's hormonal state, influences the health of society, if that person is emblematic of the place they live in? And then that somehow gets dismissed. So when you talk about these complex systems, it's one of those subjects, kind of almost like with Ray's, not Roy, but Jay, you're obviously SOAR, like with SOAR, with anti-aging. Right. We have a convergence, of hormones, of, let's just say, of aging, of hormones, of nutrition, of, metabolism as a whole, of, like lifestyle factors. Or, Roy, with your theory, you have this convergence of neuroscience, hormonal science, let's just say like social sciences, and it's coming together, and that's what the thesis is built around. Would that be, like, that's my sort of interpretation of it, like broad. Is that fairly accurate, or?
Yeah, actually, that's right. The integration of the body and mind. Yeah. Well, that's like in holistic medicine, they talk about the spirit and the body. And we have a problem in the Western tradition. The Platonic school, their first academy was invented by Plato. And Platonism actually controls our perception of our culture, of our philosophy. And Platonism is about the mind-body dualism, the separation of the body and mind. So people understand that hormones control our body, like testosterone, and controls the muscles. but they have a hard time getting it that to control our mind as well. And also, it's the same thing in the academic institutions and in our religious institutions, like in Christianity, you have the mind-body dichotomy. Like the mind is with the another dimension of reality, like the afterlife, and the body is.
Yeah, they're two separate entities. Yeah, no, that's true, because I know if you. I'm not an expert, within this field, but like with pain science or the science of physical performance, it's really fascinating because it's at a stage right now where there's finally some recognition that, the body's sort of sensory experience and the brain's sensory experience are very much one the same. That rather than view the human body as sort of this brain that's in this robotic shell, in reality that our skin or organs or muscles, all of our tissues, everything is interconnected to neurological functions. So the brain is almost the model, or the body and the brain are so integrated that where one ends and begins, it's very hard to differentiate. It's useful to think of it as being separate, and obviously that has merit. But when you're trying to understand it as a whole, and obviously science has not figured out disease, has not figured out cancer, has not figured out perfect health. You have to look at it. You have to look at it as an integrated whole. You can't try to take out pieces and say, well, this is separate, we should just treat it independently necessarily. That can work, but it also limits you by that way of thinking where, well, it's just one or the other. So.
Yeah, but that's where the study of complex systems now comes into gear, and it helps us integrate the social sciences, the humanities, the philosophy with the natural sciences like the biology, neuroscience, and we have to integrate it to reach a much higher level of understanding, and then we can cure, like we deal with the disease, we can cure this depression that's taking over our civilization right now.
So with all that said, these are all really cogent, really well said, guys. Let's kind of switch, but let's just transition to current society. And this isn't just obviously North America, this is globally. So Roy, let me ask you first. I mean, we all, obviously I've written about it in my book, Alex writes about it all the time, on my blog and his blogs. We're noticing in society at large a demasculination or a demasculization of males around the world. And obviously, as I've written about in my book, it's a multifactorial issue. It's an environmental issue. There's a lot of phytoestrogens. There's a lot of particulates. There's a lot of things that suppress men's endocrinology, sperm, hormones, all these things. But what is really beyond that, because I would say that those are more, I guess, kind of micro trends. I think your book really purports that globally, hormones are starting to succeed or lessen from a standpoint of people having a robust hormonal experience. Is it what is the main reason for that? Is it all the things that I just mentioned, or is there a bigger piece to that?
Well, I think people miss that our brain comes with a built-in control mechanism. That's the hypothalamus. It's the master hormone regulator, and it's very much controlled by solar cycles, because we have like the daily circadian rhythm, where the light and dark, day and night. So testosterone falls during the evening. In 3 o'clock in the morning, it's the minimum, and then it goes up till 9 a.m. And then it's slowly declines during the day again till we go to sleep. So we see that it's controlled by light and dark cycles, solar radiation, and I think it's also controlled in the annual cycles. And you have the monthly period of women. It's also controlled by solar cycles, and we have the annual cycles, the long-term civilization cycles, which I show in the book, are also controlled by solar radiation. Yeah. Warming trend, global cooling trends. So I think it's very much neglected in the academic science, the way the sun actually controls these biological and social systems.
So let's actually. So I have an awesome slide. Let me show that, and then you talk about that real quick, Roy. It's a perfect slide. So let me just pull this up. So this is what Roy's talking about is actually global temperatures. So go ahead. Can you guys see that slide right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead, Roy. So talk a little bit about this. I mean, it essentially goes back to exactly what you're saying. So where are we now in the solar cycle, and where are we going forward?
Well, as you can see, we can actually been very fortunate over the last 4 centuries the period of the Enlightenment, like from 1600 till 2000, we have a rising global temperatures. It means that I believe that we have a rising solar radiation that warms the earth, and it also causes us to have a rising testosterone. Most of this, at least in the early 200 years, the Enlightenment, and people feel better. They want to reason, the age of reason, the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution. So you see that since 1600, we had a good period of rising social mood, rising. We had capitalism, invention of modern science. So I think we've been very fortunate, but these cycles can change anytime. So it might be that we are now peaking in the year around 2000, and we will experience a sharp decline.
So based on this chart or this cycle, if I'm interpreting this incorrectly, just tell me. But we're technically going into a little bit of colder until about 2020, and then after 2020, we should be getting into a hot and dry cycle. So what does this foretell? So the next 20 to 25 years, what does this really say? Where are we going as a society, hormonally, and affecting obviously the population base?
Well, I think if we look at later, we look at the other chart, the solar radiation chart. It shows that the solar radiation has been collapsing over the last since 2008.
Okay, you sent me that chart, correct?
Yes, you can see the AP index chart.
Okay, yes, okay. So do you see it right now?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it right now? Is it on there now? Hold on. Let me try to share it again. I think you have to stop and then share again. So hold on. Here it is. Can you guys see it now?
Yes. Now I see it. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a very important chart because it shows the way that solar radiation fluctuates and shapes our society. For instance, the 1930s is a period of the Great Depression. It's also a psychological depression that causes depression, and then the World War II and the catastrophic situation. So you see, in the 1930s, global solar radiation was at the minimum.
Wow.
Then we had a period of rising solar radiation in the 1950s. Were very good after the war. It was a boom generation, rising fertility rates, family values, capitalism flourished, and after that, you have in the 1960s and 70s also we go into a recession, and you see a global cooling period. The solar radiation is declining. Wow. Then in the 1980s, again, a good period. 1980s was also Reagan, Thatcher, capitalism also flourishing. And you see a catastrophic decline in the last 15 years since 1998, 2000 until 2008. Catastrophic decline in solar radiation, even worse in the 1930s. And what you get in 2008, the Great Depression, really bad economic recession. And you see that solar radiation went up a bit, but not too much. And this recovery hasn't been too great for most people. It's only Wall Street has been down.
Right. That's really fascinating. Yeah, that is literally fascinating data.
No. So, right, if you mind me this sort of questioning or rejecting. So, I mean, with solar radiation, obviously, so if you're looking at just this chart and tracking that to, let's just say just the United States, the social cycles, we can see that these spikes in solar radiation, basically, like you said, correspond with very good periods where society is positive. And then whenever there's a societal decline, solar radiation is down. So, how is that? I'm just curious. Is solar radiation and global warming? Again, I'm not a meteorologist. I know something of sciences. I know that global temperature has been going up. The last so many years. Has solar radiation actually been going down though?
Yeah, what was going on is in 1998. Actually, global temperature peaked since 1998. You see, also the stock market peaked in 2000. We had
I remember.
declining solar radiation and the global warming hysteria has been a panic that didn't come true. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to global cooling because the sun is getting very, very quiet, the least active in the last 200 years. So I think we're in very danger of even worse solar radiation levels, and it may have catastrophic effects on our hormone levels because our growth hormones, our happy chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, are tuned to follow solar cycles. And because if you don't have for biological life, you need solar energy. You need the energy for the cells to work. And our biology is synchronized with solar cycles. So what's going on right now is we may be at the tipping point of another huge decline in solar radiation, and that will be really bad for the culture,
So adding to that, and this is fascinating, by the way. I'm really, really glad that we brought this slide up and that you're on the show today because this is going to be some great information for the public. But to adding to that, so what about like environmental stuff that that humans are modulating? Obviously, the food. We have all of this GMO food. We have all of this, essentially crap that is, filled with nitrates, filled with stuff that extends the shelf life and all these things that it does. Is that like a double whammy if we factor in that solar radiation is now in a state of flux and obviously declining? So are all of these things like leading to, I hate to sound like conspiracy doom and gloom, but is it all leading to a situation where we have a massive issue, interplanetary because of these things where, society declines? Like how bad do you think that it potentially could get?
Well, I believe we are in a 70-year cycle of decline. Since 2000, maybe it will be worse in 2070. So a big cycle of decline is the 70-year cycles. And you see the last big cycles were in 1930, then in 2000 another peak. So it's about 70-year cycles. But what's going on, I think, is that our hormones influence the way we perceive the world, our philosophy of life, even our nutrition. Because if you see the dietary revolution of the 1970s, has been going away from high-fat diet into a high-carbon diet, high-carbohydrate diet, and it's been catastrophic consequences. The 1970s, there was a Democratic senator who, 1978 was actually a year of the recession. It's a period of negative mood, and then people go away from a high-fat diet because the high-fat diet is actually very important for our brain, for our hormones. Testosterone and all the sex hormones are made of cholesterol, as you know. And when we go away from high-fat diet, it's very bad for our metabolism because carbons are made of sugar, and sugar contains oxygen. Oxygen is very inflammable. It causes like fire, and in the body it causes inflammation. Right. So we have diabetes. It causes all kinds of heart disease.
Well, right. That's why society at large globally is fatter. Obesity rate is rising at geometric rates. Like you said, diabetes. All of the diseases of inflammation. Quote unquote, inflammaging is what my good doctor buddy Brett Osborne likes to call it. And again, you're right. Those are all the diseases of aging. So again, we now know that this is a man-made thing, because of our diet, because people are more sedentary, because technology and the modernization of the world has allowed people to do things more automated. They're not doing the actual physical labor as much anymore. They're not walking, and exercising. They're not doing all these things because of modernization. So I guess, Roy, the question really becomes, and Alex, you can expound on this if you want. Where are we headed as a society? Are we looking at like complete and total fucking collapse? Or are we looking at 1930s depression, food lines, 80% of the world without income? Where is this really going?
Well, this cycle is going to be much longer than the 1930s. It's going to take 70 years, and we are in danger of a real big collapse. The United States, you see the polarization between the Democrats and the Republicans. Well, I think it's pretty much what happened to ancient Israel, because if you see the United States, founded by English Puritans. So the culture is really changing. But I think now we have the means to understand how it works, which people in the past didn't have, because we know a lot about neuroscience. We have the history of Western philosophy and culture. And we can analyze and put everything on the table and figure out the puzzles, and then we can do something about it. The problem is when people have a negative social mood, they don't want to do anything about it. They just become like paralyzed, and take things for granted, and that just let nature take its course, and that's not good.
So, Alex, what are your thoughts then, Alex? Based on what he's saying. I mean, Roy, just so you know, like Alex and I talk about this stuff a lot. We read a lot about mankind's ancestry, and we're really involved in the study of alternative understandings and stuff. And we believe very much along the same lines. But when I bring somebody like you onto our podcast, and you start showing us from a science-based standpoint, that, hey, look, this isn't supposition. This isn't hype and two guys or three guys talking conspiracy theory. This is like analyzing what is really happening, geoclimactically. I mean, it's scary. So what do you think, Alex? I mean, like, can we right the ship? I mean, can Donald Trump get elected the president of the United States and fix all this, or is decline inevitable, and how bad does it get?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. First, I'll preface that the human beings are very resilient. So even during, even during the darkest periods in human history, you could say, I'm Roy. I'm Jewish too, but even during, let's say, the Exodus, for that, 40 years in the desert, even during the Dark Ages, even during the fall of Rome, there were still people and there are still cultures that prospered.
Yep.
So I'll say I'm not a doom and gloom guy in the sense of humanity's just going to wipe itself out. We're all dead. People will always survive. People will always survive. People will always find a way to thrive.
For sure.
The thing that I guess is concerning and just very fascinating to me is that society right now is at this point, and you recognize this, where the idea of social values, the idea of social control, the concept of, how would you say, social good has been very much destroyed by sort of this political correctness, social justice warrior philosophy, where nothing means anything, and diversity nebulously as a concept is good, and social progress is not measured by people's well-being or by society's well-being. It's measured by how bizarre can we make things?
Right.
At the same time, though, there is this backlash reaction now, a very strong one, that
very strong.
Things are fucked up and they need to change. And the reason I make these points is because all that stuff often gets shoved into this big rug of, people are complicated and how can you possibly understand, why people do the things they do. And with your research and relative to, if you take a conversion approach looking at history, there's this demonstration that, no, society is not so complicated how it goes up and down. It's based upon factors of quite literally just what is the environment? What is the sun doing? What is the state of nutrition? And what is the state of activity? I mean, so in that sense, as bad as things could possibly be, it does give me hope from an educational perspective that this is a changeable situation. It just requires it, like Jay said and I said, it requires a multi-factor approach beyond just telling people things are bad because hormones, that things are bad because environment, which has affected hormones, which has affected everything else, but that, human beings are innovative enough that we can control, we can affect these things. These are not beyond our control.
So with that said, and Roy, you answer this, but so my question becomes, so I agree 100%. And yes, who knows how long we've actually been around? Probably humans, sapiens has actually probably been around a lot longer than fucking, world history tells us it's been around. So totally agree, Alex. Totally agree with you, Roy, too. But when you look at our political structure and you look at our systems and you look at the quote unquote elites and the people that govern all of this, and you see how polarized they are, what is it going to take for us, for smart, reasonable people like ourselves, to come to an agreement or build some form of accord that can affect, the world globally to start, prospering. I mean, and let me just add as an aside, I mean, we all know now that technology is so vast and so great that we definitely have the ability to end hunger. We have the ability to end, the bullshit, coal-based energy systems. I mean, all of this stuff is still like being held on to by this group of people, and I don't know who they are, and I don't care. But that it's like centralization of power and centralization of money. So to me, the question becomes is how does that fix itself? Because if you look at the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats are not going to fix anything. Okay, they're going to be polarized and they're going to entrench themselves, and that's what it is. So how does the world actually fix itself? Like, how do we? I mean, what is the way? I mean, I guess I sit here and I scratch my head because I don't see in the current system. I guess what I'm asking is, does it take revolution? Is that what is necessary for us to move forward as a species and advance beyond where we're at now? Because clearly,
I would say so.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, Roy?
Yeah. If you talk about the American Revolution, that's a good example. What happened there is, I think, it's extremely high testosterone culture, because you see, the American Revolution was about liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right. That's a amazingly good social mood, and it was the United States is called the nation of the Enlightenment. It was the peak of the Enlightenment, the age of reason. Now, what is enlightenment? Light. Light influences our happy chemicals, our growth hormones. And then we want to prosper, we want to flourish, we want to be happy, we want to enjoy life, happiness, and liberty. Yes? And these are the values that are the product of high solar energy and high hormone levels. So, and that when you talk about liberty and independence, that's also has to do with testosterone, because testosterone creates also the high dopamine and serotonin levels, and that makes serotonin makes you feel well. And dopamine makes you want to be creative, rational, and also it's called an internal locus of control. When you want to be in command of your own life, of your own destiny, and that's what liberty is all about. So when these hormones fall, we have the opposite. Now we see people going to communism, fascism. We have social conflict. Feminism is a war between genders.
Right. Social justice warriors own everything. They own social media. Right. I mean, everything is owned by the social justice movement. You're right. It's very well.
Yeah, socialism is about class warfare. So if you take about racism, it's race warfare, and you have like Islamic jihadis, a religious warfare, where they want to dominate the whole world. So people go into conflict, into warfare, and that's like the biological cycles, the social cycles. They repeat in history over and over again.
So knowing the radiation cycles then that you just talked about, I guess my concern is there any hope, or is it just going to take time then? I mean, can a revolution be sustainable? Can a revolution be initiated and sustained in the next 20 years, or in your opinion, there's no hope and we just have to wait till the solar radiation cycle, starts over again?
Well, actually, the knowledge we have today, I think, enables us to control nature. That's what the Enlightenment has been about. Francis Bacon said it best. He was the father of empirical science. He said, nature to be commanded must be obeyed. So we have to command nature. We have to understand how it works. That's what science is about. And we have the tools to do it. The problem is the will, because hormone means impetus, motivation. It motivates you to be active or to be passive. And when these hormones fall, people don't have the motivation to act, and they want to be passive. They want the government to give them everything for free. That's what communism is about, right? And now we see Bernie Sanders is very popular with the young people.
Right, Bernie Sanders, right.
The young people are most influenced by hormones, because between the ages of 18 and 24 is when the hormones kick in, puberty. And that's when people start to be rebellious. They want to be independent. That's was the Protestant Reformation was about protesting against the Catholic Church, about centralized control of the Pope and the Vatican. And then you have the Protestants, the sects, the Calvinists, all the different groups, and they built modern capitalism, Western civilization. The Enlightenment was built by Protestants, so it's also a factor of hormones.
So Roy, this is awesome, Dad. I'm so glad. But Alex, to me, isn't this fascinating that he's literally providing like a geopolitical, social, historical analysis of what we're experiencing right now, which is like our master thesis that the reason society is fucked is because we have so many adults in positions of power who literally have completely suppressed endocrine systems, who are incapable of logic and reason, and as you very aptly put, Roy, motivation, because they have low hormones.
Right, that's
really
the point.
where we're at.
Well, we're at this point, we're like in the Matrix. Like if you take the testosterone pill, you can call it the red pill or the blue pill. So I call it testosterone the red pill because it makes you aware of of reality, of what's really going on. While the masses, they're on the blue pill, they don't know what's going on. But if we have enough people that know what's going on, we can make a big change because we have the tools, we have the knowledge now that wasn't available anywhere in human history. So it's really revolutionary, and I think we do have hope, but we have big challenges ahead.
That's awesome. What are your thoughts, Alex? I mean, he's essentially saying, what we believe, which is, people have to take control of their health. And it starts with understanding their hormone levels. And before you came on the show, Roy, or Alex, Roy and I were talking about, like, he said exactly what you and I always say, and obviously what I've written about in the book is that the average person has no clue. The average person feels like shit, doesn't understand why they feel like shit, goes to the doctor writes a script for an SSRI inhibitor or an erectile dysfunction medication instead of actually looking at their internal biochemistry, which is suppressed because of all these things that Roy is talking about. So realistically, the bigger picture here is, I know it sounds crazy, but the importance of Roy's book, the importance of my book, I mean, it really does come down to solve the suppression of people's endocrine and biological systems, and you solve all of the quote unquote issues that humanity is currently facing. I mean, is that overly simplistic or naive?
Yeah, that's amazing.
I would say, I mean, a lot. This is like a lot of confirmation bias for us. I mean, as a scientist, thinking that way, I could say you're just agreeing with everything I want to think. But I would say that right now, let's just say being objective. If you take this, let's just say social science research that grades public mood, what is the public's feelings about the future, and pretty much all of those on consensus are overwhelmingly negative. I would say that there is a recognition, especially within politics right now, and you're seeing this, Roy, in Europe as well, where there's a recognition in politics where people feel marginalized, and it's not just a small marginalization, it's a very large marginalization. Like in the US, I'll use Trump as the example since that's a very international example. Trump has risen as his candidate in the US political scene, and he's essentially just high testosterone.
Right.
And, rather than him be like this outlier candidate that was blown under the rug, the media has sort of revealed its own fishbowl perspective that he is quite likely could win the US presidency. He is close enough to it, or at least will be in the running for it, that he will dramatically influence that election. And if we just take him as an example, and we talk about the red pill, we could argue that we have, that we have tens of millions of people that have red pill thinking or close enough to it that once you've taken the pill, you cannot untake it. That is what the red pill is. Once you are aware, you cannot become unaware again.
Right.
So, I would say, like, if nothing else, it quite literally comes down to just like, I mean, this is an oversimplification, over-reductionism. But it's testosterone, estrogen, and probably vitamin D along with it from not being in the sun enough.
Right.
I mean, and this is me being very redundant and very, let's just say, bro science. If you go to any area that's a hot country where people are in the sun, I would be very interested to see what their, let's just say, average, national testosterone levels are. Because in the colder countries of Western Europe, especially like in the Nordic countries and the social welfare countries, they have very cold winters and they're not in the sun that much. If you go to let's just say Sun Belt, let's just say along the equator, those countries historically, not that they're high testosterone countries, but I'd be curious to see what their, let's just say, overall hormonal health is. So I mean, a lot of it, it's just fascinating that so much of this comes down to just, not even, it's just environmental exposure. So. What can be done about it? Like I said, like if enough red pill thinkers are out there and they are aware of it, they know it, and that we know that we exist, things will change. Because if nothing else, even if we are the minority, we are the ones that are willing to take action over the majority that will not. Yeah, it only takes one person in a group of 100 to have the idea that directs the whole group. So,
well, listen, I'm here to tell you guys right now, if Donald Trump does win the presidency, things will change in the United States, because he stands, unless he's a complete pup. I mean, if things don't change and he does win, then we got bigger problems, I think. But, you know, it just goes back to what you just said. The one person that can initiate change is someone, you know, who's pro-testosterone, who can basically come in and say, you know, I'm here to end all this morass, all this nonsense, all this, you know, partisan bullshit that continues to go on and has for 30 or 40 years. Now, whether or not one person, you know, whether it's Trump or whomever it is, can actually go through, you know, this divide that's been there and invisible for so long, I don't know. I guess it's another question, you know, that if it's even possible to answer, I don't really know. You know, I don't know how rigged our system truly is. But clearly Trump says all the right things. And as you said, he is pro-testosterone, which being pro-testosterone, being pro-action, you know, he's an action guy. You know, he's going to be a business person. He's going to look at the political system as like how he runs a business, which is obviously I make a profit. People are successful in it. So I really do think that he could be that initiator, or that one guy that changes, the quote unquote disruptor. But I don't know. I mean, again, our system is just weird. You know, politicians are very, 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 very tight-lit. You know, it's the lobby, the discretion, all that stuff that goes on and has gone on for so long. Can one person really change it? I mean, I guess all I can say is for the United States' sake, I hope so, because there's no question that Hillary and Bernie do not represent change. And as Roy said, they represent more, you know, communism, socialism, however you want to look at it, but the whole collective, you know, nobody has any individual freedoms, nobody has any individual initiatives, you know, let the government manage you. So we have to, and I've had this conversation, and Roy, go ahead and jump in on this in a second, but I've had this conversation with Alex and other people, and our belief right now in the United States is that if somebody other than Trump wins the election, we got big fucking problems. Like this country is already on the brink of like whatever. Well, you know, I'll give you guys an example right now, Roy. Like if Hillary or Bernie wins, and it's very likely that they will, but if they win and then they somehow get a liberal, quote unquote, Supreme Justice on the bench, and they try to ratify taking the guns out of the American public's hands, I already know for a fact 16 states will succeed from the United States the same day. Like literally will succeed. So, I mean, you can imagine like what, you know, I told Alex the other day about how amazing the world that we're living is right now, Roy, right? Because like there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but it's to me, it's actually exciting to be alive right now. Because there's so much potential change. There's so many great things that are happening. And obviously we would look down the, you know, a year out from now, we see the potential for even more historic things. So anyway, what are your thoughts? I mean, you know, all that said, Roy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree that Trump represents higher testosterone than the left, because the left is a feminist, more like socialist, and Trump is more business-like person. And also the conservative Christian right is more about masculinity and independence, liberty. But I don't agree that he offers a lot of hope. Actually, I think he will bring the next depression, because his whole agenda is about trade warfare. He wants to trade war against China is totally crazy. That's what happened in the 1930s.
He's not a politician. He's definitely not a professional politician.
But he's not. He doesn't understand free trade and capitalism and at all, because what he promises to do actually is a repeat of the 1930s. President Hoover was also a Republican, and he put the smooth holy tariffs in 1931, I think. And it caused the Great Depression because the trade collapsed. That's a repeat of what was going to happen with Trump, 1-to-1.
So do you think then that that's inevitable? So I mean, I think we all agree that none of them are optimal. Okay. So does it matter then? I mean, does it again just come to where we have to have another decline, whether it's a collapse or not? I mean, again, we know that humanity is not going to go away, but you know, do we have to have this to rise above it? Do we have to have another collapse to rise above it, regardless of who the next elected president is?
Well, that's what happens in history of the cycles of collapse.
Right.
But I think we can understand how it works, so we can do something about it. But the problem is, my book is revolutionary, and very few people even understand what I mean. Alex said that when he talks to people about hormones and civilization, they don't understand what you're talking about.
Right.
So we have very difficult work to do to try to get more people, and there are many people who may be interested in this, but it's difficult message to bring. And now this polarization between Trump or Hillary Clinton, I don't think it will get the economy or the political very far, because they both represent negative trend in social mood. Trump, his main agenda is anti-immigration, anti-free trade. That's not how you get prosperity. I mean, when America was founded, the Statue of Liberty is about welcoming immigration, because immigrants were viewed as people who are producers. They can create and bring a greater economic benefit.
The only thing I will say about Trump, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't think really any of us know what he's about. I mean, he really is like a reality game show television guy, and now he's like going to possibly be the presidential candidate for the Republicans. No one's really read about his platform. I mean, it's like a joke. So, I mean, I totally see what you're saying. He's against this. He's against that. He wants to shut off the borders. He wants to become, United States to be xenophobic. We don't really know if he is that, because if he does get elected, there's no possible way that he's not going to hire professional, quote unquote, politicians to oversee certain things. So I don't really think that we ultimately know what his platform is. I mean, I don't think he fucking knows what his platform is.
Yeah, that's
he's not a politician, right?
Well,
Go ahead, Alex.
Trump. I think Trump, is inspiring, whether he wins or not. And I know people, if anyone listens says Trump's inspiring, he is, because he's taken a system that was widely regarded by the entire general public as being rigged and default, and had become incredibly polarized. And his rise through it has been something that every media outlet has predicted. Essentially that he would collapse within a week of announcing his candidacy.
And they continue.
And I think he's kind of. Yeah, no, he's kind of been a callous for the fact that what you think is impossible is actually possible. Right. I know that sounds very cliched, but it's it's that belief that impossible is nothing. Had I described to you 2 years ago that Trump would be the leading candidate to be president of the U.S., I would have been laughed out of any room I said that in.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been utterly insane. You wouldn't believe. No one would have believed that.
Insane.
Nobody.
Insane.
And the fact is that he's fucking done it.
Right.
So so relative to what the average person can do, or someone on our scale, I think we can do a lot. It's possible to create change far beyond.
That's actually a great point, Alex. I mean, a very, very salient point, because it's true. I mean, you're right. If you would have asked anybody, Roy, 3 years ago, if Donald Trump could run for president and get the nomination, they would literally look at you like you were a fucking alien. Like, what the hell? So, so I guess it comes down. We're 40, almost 50 minutes into this, and I want to try to wrap this up in 5 minutes or so. It's been an awesome show, but I don't think any of us really knows. We can't predict the future. None of us are Nostradamus. We don't know what's happening. We definitely know from what Roy's proved here with the charts in his book that all of this stuff is entirely predictable. That you can go back.
It's interconnected.
Yes, you can go back and you can look at these cycles and solar radiation and cooling charts and it's unbelievable when you see the rise and the fall and correlate it to the timing of what was happening globally and historically at those times. And so it's when I was looking at that chart, it was kind of mind bending for me now and thinking back. But so in the next 5 minutes, each of us kind of speaks out. Roy, you go first, but where are we in 10 years from now? Okay. This is just your prediction. This is just your, gut. You're flipping a coin and your guns to your head, and you have to give this information out. So where are we in 10 years from now as a society globally?
Well, I think it's a bit of a gloom and doom, because right now we're at the peak of the bubble. We had a big bubble popping in 2000, then in 2008. Now in 2015 is a 7-year cycle. It repeats every 7 years.
Right.
It's even mentioned in the Bible, the 7-year cycle, the good 7 years and the bad stuff. So I think it's going to be very all the way down for the next few years. But I think evolution and our culture will experience a big decline. But on the other hand, it's also a time of opportunity because we can now expose the secrets to people, and we get more people on board. And that's what we are trying to do here, educate the public. I don't think it's going to come from the academic institution. Unfortunately, they are too afraid of the the social mind.
They're controlled by socialists and social justice warriors for sure, 100%. So, all right. So if I'm interpreting you, and then you're next, Alex. If I'm interpreting what you're saying, you in your mind, we have one more massive decline to continue the decline that we're in now to the bottom, but hopefully within 10 years from now, we'll be on the way back up by that 10-year period. Is that what I'm hearing you?
I think America is in real danger of splitting into two. That's what happened to ancient Israel. Was under the same pressures. You see, the socialist left, the feminist is the big voting bloc are single mothers. That's what happened. Really breakdown of the family structure, and the single mothers have to vote for big government in order to sustain this lifestyle. They need the government to raise taxes on men, so the men pay the taxes, and the pay the benefits. So that's what happened in ancient Israel. You see, King Solomon, same process. He married 1,000 women. He was the government.
Right.
So and then there was a tax revolt, and then they split into two, Judea and the Kingdom of Israel, and then it was the end of united the Kingdom of Israel. So I think the United States might experience the same process and split into two between the right and the left, the conservative Christian belt and the liberals, because it's totally polar worldviews. They don't have much in common anymore. And when the hormones decline, chemicals, you have a group conflict. So you see it in socialist and communist and fascist and everything, and feminist. So it's not going to be a happy situation unless we can bring this message to people, and maybe some people will realize the importance of our biological impetus, of our hormones and how they work, and we can pretty easily fix it. I mean, because we cannot control the sun, but like you have a seasonal affective disorder. When people are depressed, like in North Canada, and they use light to solve depression. So it's pretty easy to solve this depression if you understand the dynamics. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And people can definitely optimize their hormones. So I agree with you 100%. All right, Alex, you're up. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, predictions. This is.
You're guessing. It's a guess.
I don't want to. No, I know. Okay, I don't want to say that. Oh, we're headed towards World War III, but and it doesn't make me happy to say that at all. But I think with the current geopolitical climate, that there is going to be a period over the next, let's just say, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years of just intense conflict.
Right.
Probably. Maybe, I mean, again, like it probably will escalate to full-scale warfare at some point. Whether in the Middle East or I won't think it will affect the United States per se directly that way, but it will affect us this way. Everything is connected at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The only way I think I see things changing around that way to try to give some positive spin to it is that if the U.S. and globally, I guess Western Europe, it's a point of just, I want to say total collapse, but just where things start breaking. People are resilient. That will be at the stage where when you hit the rock bottom point, whatever that is relative to the current system, wherever the rock bottom point is, that's where the awareness factor will finally come into play. It will take a crisis to create positive change.
Right.
Let's say it that way. And I don't think we're that far off from things changing in a positive way, but it's going to take a kind of crisis situation. It just will. People are too comfortable. The system right now is too comfortable for people to address this and want to educate themselves. When it hits crisis point, then that will be the way that the paradigm shifts. Do I think that will happen sooner rather than later? Yeah, I don't think we're 100 years away from that. I think we're probably within a decade. Like the Bible says, it goes in your cycles. But at the same time, unfortunately, things are going to get bad before they get better.
Right.
It will get worse before it gets good. Just will.
So I agree with both of you guys. I also look at it from a population dynamic, situation. Being in real estate, Roy, that's how I make my money. It's the haves and have-nots have grown. It's such a disparity now between the super, super wealthy and the poor. There is no middle class. The middle class is being completely eroded everywhere. And, you know, again, from a population dynamic standpoint, all you have to understand when that happens is that the super wealthy are such a small factional minority of actual human population that it gets to a certain point where they just cannot govern the hordes, you know, which is the masses of poor. So there's no possible way that it can last, or at least can continue at this rate of the separation of the haves and the have-nots, quote unquote. So I agree with you guys 100%. I feel we have to go down further and decline substantially more. I'm not also, predicting, gloom and doom, fire and brimstone shit, cats and dogs living together, that stuff. But I really do think that it's sooner rather than later. And I think for all of our purposes, hopefully, it's not something where it is, like a 1932, 1933, 1934, bread lines, I mean, that's the only thing we can hope for. And I do agree with you, Roy. The technology, the knowledge, the know-how that we have is so great that you would think that kind of shit could be avoided. The only concern I have is that we still have such polarized partisan politicos that I don't know if they're capable of actually coming together. And like you said, it may take a complete split, a schism in the United States, like you said, between right and left, or between feminized and testosterone people. It's crazy. But I think, again, like I told Alex yesterday, it's a beautiful world. It's an amazing time to be alive. Any of us can take a laptop and can create a business and can make money and can do something with it, and touch, people at various points in the world because of technology. So because of that, I just hope that we can, maintain some sort of a standard between each of each other. But final words, Roy, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I think that's a good summary. But you're right. We have a great opportunity here, and we have the knowledge, and it would be a pity if it goes to waste. But another point is, we know everybody of us who is alive. One day we're going to die, but we still enjoy our life and have a good time, and do great things. So I think we don't have to be unhappy and feel bad about it, because this is the way the world works. And we can enjoy our life anyway and try to do the best. I mean, that's what we can do.
That's awesome. That's a great point. Alex, what's your final thought?
Yeah, I mean, if you can change your mind, you can change your life. And relative to regardless of where everything is at right now, like the possibility always exists. So I am optimistic in that sense.
Awesome. I think we all are. And so, Roy, listen, man, I really, really appreciate you coming on today. So what I'm going to do is actually let me let you promote your book real quick for, kind of final thoughts. Like how can people find your book online? Do you want them to go to your site, or do you want them to go to Amazon, or both? To tell people how they can find your book.
Okay, thanks. It's on Amazon. It's the name is The Testosterone Hypothesis, and I also have a website, testosteronecivilization.com.
Right.
You can find my book on Amazon, so it's
awesome. Easy. So what I'll do is when I post this, okay, guys. Well, again, thanks for coming on. Hold on, let me just stop the recording.